I need you to give me a child." The words hung in the freezing air between them, impossible and raw. Ethan Vale, billionaire, widower, father, stood frozen in his doorway, staring at the trembling woman he'd quietly watched from across the street for months. Mia Carter's face was streaked with tears, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold them still. This wasn't a conversation. It was a confession, a plea, a breaking point. What happens when grief becomes so unbearable that you ask a stranger for the impossible? Stay until the end, comment, and tell me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight. Not the gentle Oregon mist that people romanticized in travel magazines, but the kind of cold, relentless downpour that turned the world gray and made everything feel heavier than it should. Ethan Vale stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his home office, watching water sheet down the glass, distorting the view of the street below. Somewhere out there, beyond the expensive landscaping and the wrought iron gates, the rest of the world kept spinning. Board meetings, quarterly reports, investor calls that never seemed to end. None of it mattered right now. His son Lucas was asleep upstairs. 6 years old, curly brown hair, gap-toothed smile that could light up a room when he wasn't being stubborn as hell. Ethan had read him 3 books tonight instead of the usual one because the kid had looked at him with those big eyes and said, "Please, Dad? Just one more?" And Ethan, who could negotiate million-dollar deals without flinching, had caved immediately. He rubbed his face, feeling the stubble he kept forgetting to shave. 32 years old, and he felt ancient some days. The house was too quiet. It had been too quiet for 4 years now, ever since Caroline died. Cancer. Fast and brutal and unfair in every possible way. She'd been 30 when it took her, and Lucas had been too young to understand why Mommy wasn't coming home from the hospital. Ethan still didn't have good answers for that. He turned away from the window, poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey he wouldn't finish, and tried not to think about how empty the house felt despite having more square footage than any reasonable person needed. Across the street, a light was still on. Mia Carter's place. A small rental, probably built in the 70s, with paint peeling around the window frames and a roof that looked like it leaked when the rain got bad. He'd noticed her the first week he moved into this neighborhood. Noticed her because she was always moving, always working, always doing something, hauling groceries, fixing her mailbox, leaving for work before sunrise and coming home after dark. She was pretty in a way that seemed almost accidental. Dark hair usually pulled back in a messy ponytail, lean build that came from never sitting still rather than expensive gym memberships, eyes that were kind but carried something heavy behind them. Ethan had helped her a few times over the past year, jumped her car battery when it died in January, carried a broken washing machine to the curb when she couldn't lift it herself. Small things. Neighbor things. She always thanked him too much, like she wasn't used to people helping without expecting something in return. Tonight, her light flickered off around 11. Ethan finished his whiskey, well, half of it, and headed upstairs to check on Lucas one more time before bed. The kid had kicked off his blankets again, sprawled out like a starfish across his twin mattress. Ethan pulled the covers back up, kissed his forehead, and stood there longer than necessary, just watching him breathe. This was enough, he told himself. Lucas was enough. Work was enough. He didn't need anything else. The knock came 2 nights later. Ethan was in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner, or more accurately, scraping mac and cheese off a plate while Lucas played with Legos in the living room. The sound startled him because people didn't just show up at his house. Everyone called first. Everyone scheduled. He wiped his hands on a towel, walked to the front door, and checked the security camera screen mounted on the wall. Mia. She was standing on his porch, soaked through despite the awning, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold something inside. Her face was... Ethan pulled the door open before he could think about it. "Mia?" She looked up at him, and that's when he saw it. The tears. The way her whole body was shaking, and not just from the cold. "I'm sorry," she said immediately, voice cracking. I didn't know where else to... Come inside." He stepped back, gesturing her in. "You're freezing." She hesitated like she was about to bolt, but then another shiver ran through her and she stepped across the threshold. Water dripped from her jacket onto his marble floor. She noticed, started to apologize again, and Ethan cut her off. "Don't. Just hang on." He grabbed a towel from the half bath off the entryway, handed it to her, then walked to the living room doorway. Lucas looked up from his Lego creation, eyes curious. "Hey, buddy, I need you to keep building for a few minutes, okay? I have to talk to Miss Carter." "Is she okay?" Lucas asked, too perceptive for his own good. "She will be. Stay in here." Lucas nodded, already turning back to his blocks. Ethan returned to the entryway where Mia was still standing, dripping and trembling and looking like she regretted everything. "Living room or kitchen?" Ethan asked quietly. "I can't. I should go." "Mia, kitchen or living room?" She swallowed hard. "Kitchen." He led her there, pulled out one of the bar stools at the island, and waited until she sat before putting the kettle on. Tea seemed like the right move. He had no idea if she even liked tea, but it gave him something to do with his hands while she tried to pull herself together. For a long minute, neither of them spoke. The kettle started to hiss. "I lost them," Mia said suddenly, voice barely above a whisper. Ethan turned. "What?" "My family. My husband. My daughter." Her hands were gripping the towel so tight her knuckles were white. 3 years ago, car accident, drunk driver ran a red light. The kettle screamed. Ethan turned it off, poured hot water over a tea bag he'd dropped into a mug, and set it in front of her. She didn't touch it. "Mia, Emma was 4. Mia's voice cracked again. 4 years old. She loved dinosaurs. She had this stuffed T-Rex she carried everywhere, and she'd make up these elaborate stories about him. His name was Mr. Chomps." A broken laugh. "God, that's such a stupid name." "It's not," Ethan said quietly. "And David, my husband, he was a teacher, high school English. He'd come home every day complaining about how none of his students read the assigned books, and then he'd spend his evenings grading essays anyway because he cared so damn much." She finally looked up at Ethan, eyes red and swollen. They were everything. And then they were just gone. Ethan pulled out the stool next to her, sat down. He didn't touch her, didn't offer empty platitudes. He just waited. "I thought I could handle it," Mia continued. "I thought if I just kept working, kept moving, kept surviving, eventually it would hurt less. But it doesn't. It's been 3 years and I still wake up sometimes forgetting they're dead. I reach for David in bed and he's not there. I hear a kid laugh and I turn around expecting to see Emma." She pressed her hands against her face. "I can't do this anymore." "Can't do what?" "Be alone. Be empty. She dropped her hands, looked at him with something desperate and determined at the same time. "I want another chance." Ethan's chest tightened. "Mia, I want to be a mother again. I need to be a mother again. It's the only thing that ever made sense in my life, and losing her broke something in me that won't heal unless—" She stopped, took a shaky breath. "I don't have anyone. My parents are dead. David's family blamed me for the accident, said if I'd been driving instead of him, maybe he'd have seen the other car coming. I have no siblings, no close friends, no one who would—" "Wait." Ethan held up a hand, trying to process. "Are you asking me to help me have a child?" "Yes." The words came out in a rush, like she had to say them before she lost her nerve. "I know it sounds insane. I know we barely know each other, but you're kind and you're stable and you're a good father, and I can't go to some anonymous sperm bank and hope for the best. I need this to be real. I need to know the person who—" She stopped, looking at him with eyes that were begging him to understand. Ethan sat back, mind reeling. "Mia, this is crazy. I know. I was going to say complicated. That too." He ran a hand through his hair, trying to organize his thoughts into something coherent. A woman he barely knew had just shown up at his house in the middle of a rainstorm asking him to father her child. This wasn't something covered in any parenting book or business negotiation he'd ever been part of. "Why me?" he asked finally. Mia laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Because you're the only person in my life who's been kind without wanting something in return. Because I've watched you with Lucas and I can see you're a good dad. Because—" She stopped, looked down at her hands. "Because I'm desperate and terrified and I don't have anyone else to ask." The honesty of it hit him harder than any polished pitch ever could. "I don't want your money," she added quickly. "I don't want to trap you or complicate your life, or I just want a chance to be a mom again." That's all. That's all, Ethan repeated, almost laughing at the absurdity. Mia, that's not a small thing. I know. This would change everything. I know. I have Lucas to think about. My work, my... I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm not asking you to raise the child with me. I'm just asking for help. Please. Her voice broke on the last word. I know I have no right to ask this. I know it's selfish and probably wrong and completely unfair to you, but I don't know what else to do. I've spent 3 years trying to figure out how to keep living, and this is the only answer I've found. Ethan stood up, walked to the window over the sink, stared out at the rain. His reflection looked back at him, tired, uncertain, completely out of his depth. Behind him, he heard Mia start to cry again. Quiet, broken sobs that she was trying to muffle. He thought about Caroline, about the plans they'd made for a big family, about how Lucas still asked sometimes when he was getting a brother or sister, about the emptiness that had settled into every corner of this too-big house. He thought about loneliness, about grief, about what it meant to keep surviving versus actually living. I need time, he said, not turning around. This isn't a decision I can make right now. I understand. Mia's voice was steadier now. I'm sorry for dumping this on you. Don't apologize. He finally turned to face her. You're asking me something huge, but you're being honest about it. That matters. She stood, wrapping the towel around her shoulders like a shawl. Thank you for listening, and for the tea I didn't drink. A small smile tugged at Ethan's mouth despite everything. You're welcome. He walked her to the door, watched her step back out into the rain. She paused on the porch, looked back at him. I meant what I said, about you being kind. That's not nothing. Then she was gone, hurrying across the street to her small house, leaving Ethan standing in his doorway with a million thoughts spinning through his head and no idea what to do with any of them. Lucas appeared at his elbow. Is Miss Carter sad? Ethan looked down at his son. Yeah, buddy, she is. Did you make her feel better? I don't know, I hope so. Lucas nodded seriously, then grabbed Ethan's hand. Come see what I built. And just like that, life went back to normal, or at least the appearance of normal. But as Ethan followed his son back to the living room, he knew nothing was normal anymore. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Ethan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over. The desperation in Mia's voice, the way she'd looked at him like he was her last hope, the impossible things she was asking. He'd built a tech company from nothing. He'd navigated hostile takeovers, convinced skeptical investors, made decisions that affected thousands of employees. He'd raised a son alone through the worst grief of his life. But this was different. This wasn't business. This wasn't even just about him. It was about bringing a life into the world, about responsibility and connection and consequences he couldn't fully predict. It was about a woman who'd lost everything, asking him to help her find something worth living for again. Around 3 a.m, he gave up on sleep, went downstairs, and opened his laptop. He didn't know what he was looking for exactly. Answers, probably, or at least some framework for thinking about this rationally. Instead, he found himself looking at photos, old photos from before Caroline got sick, family trips to the coast, Lucas as a baby, Caroline laughing at something he'd said. The 3 of them together, happy, whole. He missed her. Even after 4 years, he missed her so much it sometimes felt like drowning. But he also knew she wouldn't want him stuck in the past forever. She'd made him promise, near the end, that he'd keep living, that he'd give Lucas the best life possible, that he'd find happiness again if he could. Was this happiness? Or was this just another form of running away from grief? He closed the laptop, rubbed his eyes, and wondered if Mia was awake across the street, asking herself the same kinds of questions. 3 days passed. Ethan went through the motions, conference calls, emails, taking Lucas to school and picking him up, making dinner, reading bedtime stories, being present while his mind was somewhere else entirely. He caught himself watching Mia's house more than he should, saw her leave for work early, come home late. She didn't look at his place, didn't wave, didn't acknowledge. Their conversation had ever happened. Maybe she regretted it. Maybe she hoped he'd just forget and they could go back to being polite neighbors who barely spoke. But Ethan couldn't forget. The question followed him everywhere. In board meetings, he'd drift off mid-presentation, thinking about what it would mean to say yes. During Lucas's soccer practice, he'd watch the other parents and wonder if they'd think he was crazy. Late at night, alone in his too quiet house, he'd imagine another child, a daughter maybe, someone for Lucas to grow up with. Was it wrong to want that? Was it wrong to consider this for his own reasons, not just to help Mia? On the fourth day, he made a decision. He waited until after Lucas was asleep, then walked across the street and knocked on Mia's door. She answered in sweatpants and an old college t-shirt, hair damp like she'd just showered. When she saw him, her expression went carefully neutral. "Ethan? Can we talk?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. "Yeah, come in." Her house was small but tidy. Minimal furniture, nothing on the walls. It looked like a place someone lived out of necessity rather than choice. Like she was still waiting for permission to make it feel like home. They sat on her worn couch, and Ethan noticed she kept distance between them. "I've been thinking," he started. "I'm sorry. Let me finish." He took a breath. "What you asked me, it's huge. It's complicated. It's probably the most insane thing anyone's ever asked me." Mia nodded, looking down at her hands. "But I understand it," Ethan continued. "The grief, the loneliness, the feeling like something's missing that you'll never get back." He paused. "I lost my wife 4 years ago, cancer, and I've spent every day since trying to figure out how to be enough for Lucas while feeling like part of me died with her." Mia looked up, eyes shining. "I didn't know. I'm so sorry." "Don't be. I'm telling you because I get it. That desperate need to feel whole again, to have purpose beyond just surviving." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "So here's what I'm thinking. I can't promise you this will work. I can't promise it won't get messy or complicated or difficult, but if you're serious about this, if you really want to do this, then I'll help you." The hope that flooded her face was almost painful to see. "You mean it?" "I mean it. But we do this right. We talk to doctors, we figure out the logistics, we make sure we're both clear on what this means going forward, and we're honest with each other about everything." "Yes, absolutely. Whatever you need." Ethan nodded slowly. "Okay then." Mia let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in her chest for years. "Thank you. God, thank you. You have no idea what this means. I think I do." He offered a small smile. "We're both looking for something we lost. Maybe we can help each other find it." She wiped at her eyes, laughing a little through the tears. "This is crazy." "Completely. But you're really doing this?" "I'm really doing this." They sat there in her small living room, two broken people making an impossible agreement, and for the first time in longer than Ethan could remember, the silence didn't feel quite so heavy. The next week moved in a blur. They met twice more at his place, always after Lucas was asleep, to talk through details that felt both clinical and surreal. Medical considerations, financial arrangements that Mia kept trying to refuse until Ethan pointed out that prenatal care wasn't cheap and he had more money than he'd ever need. What they'd tell people, though they agreed to keep it quiet for now, at least until they knew if it would even work. Mia insisted on contributing something, even though her salary from the clerical job barely covered rent. She'd taken on extra freelance work, data entry at night, determined not to be completely dependent on him. Ethan found it both admirable and frustrating. Pride was fine, but she was already exhausted. "You're going to burn yourself out," he told her one evening, watching her fight off yawns. "I'll be fine." "When's the last time you slept more than 5 hours?" "I don't know." "When's the last time you did?" Fair point. They'd started having dinner together a few times a week. Nothing fancy, just easier than eating alone. Mia would bring over groceries and cook, while Ethan helped Lucas with homework. It felt domestic in a way that should have been awkward, but somehow wasn't. Lucas liked her. That surprised Ethan at first, because his son was usually shy around new people, but Mia had a way of talking to kids that didn't feel forced or condescending. She listened when Lucas rambled about dinosaurs or complained about his teacher. She asked real questions and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. One night, about 2 weeks after their agreement, Lucas looked up from his spaghetti and asked, "Is Miss Mia your girlfriend, Dad?" Ethan nearly choked on his water. Mia's face went red. "No, buddy, we're friends." "But she's a girl, and she's your friend." "That's not— Look, it's complicated." Lucas scrunched up his face, clearly not satisfied with that answer, but he went back to eating. Mia caught Ethan's eye across the table, and they both had to look away to keep from laughing. Later, after Lucas was in bed, they sat on the porch. It had finally stopped raining, and the air smelled clean and sharp. "He's a good kid," Mia said quietly. "Most of the time." Ethan smiled. "He has his moments. You're doing a good job with him." "I'm trying. Some days I have no idea what I'm doing." "That's parenting, from what I remember." Her voice went softer. "Emma used to ask me questions I had no answers for, like why the sky was blue or where dreams came from. I'd just make something up and hope it sounded convincing. Did it work? Usually, kids are forgiving that way." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Ethan noticed how Mia had relaxed around him over the past couple weeks. She smiled more, laughed occasionally, still carried that sadness, but it wasn't the only thing in her eyes anymore. "Are you scared?" he asked. "Terrified." "Me too." She looked at him. "But you're still doing this." "So are you." "Yeah." She pulled her knees up to her chest. "I guess we're both crazy. Or brave. Or desperate. Maybe all three." Mia laughed, and it was a real laugh this time, not the broken sound from that first night. "This is the weirdest thing I've ever done." "Same. But it feels right. Is that strange?" Ethan thought about it, about how natural it had started to feel, having her here, how Lucas had adjusted without question, how the house felt less empty with her cooking in the kitchen or curled up on the other end of the couch. "No," he said finally. "It doesn't feel strange at all." The appointment was scheduled for the following Tuesday, a fertility clinic in Portland, about 2 hours north. Ethan had called ahead, explained the situation in the vaguest possible terms, and was assured they could help. The doctor they'd be seeing specialized in IUI, intrauterine insemination, which seemed less invasive than IVF and had decent success rates. Numbers, statistics, medical terminology. It all felt very clinical and removed from the emotional reality of what they were doing. Mia was quiet on the drive up. She stared out the window at the passing landscape, fingers twisting together in her lap. "You can change your mind," Ethan said. "No judgment if you do." "I'm not changing my mind, I'm just processing." "Okay. Are you changing yours?" "No." She nodded, seemed to relax slightly. "I keep thinking about what happens if it works. What kind of mother I'll be this time. If I've learned anything from losing Emma, or if I'll just make all the same mistakes." "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because you're thinking about it. That's half the battle." The clinic was modern and sterile, all white walls and neutral tones designed to be calming, but somehow achieving the opposite effect. They checked in, filled out paperwork, and waited in a consultation room that smelled like antiseptic and something floral. Dr. Sarah Chen was in her 40s, professional but warm, and she didn't blink at their unconventional arrangement. "I've worked with all kinds of families," she said, settling into her chair. "What matters is that you're both consenting adults with a clear understanding of what you're pursuing." She walked them through the process: medical history, fertility testing, timing, success rates. It was a lot of information delivered quickly, and Ethan watched Mia try to absorb it all while looking increasingly overwhelmed. "How long does it usually take?" Mia asked. Dr. Chen gave her a kind smile. "That varies widely. Some people get pregnant on the first try. Others need several cycles. There's no way to predict with certainty." "But it's possible?" "Absolutely possible." They scheduled the necessary tests: blood work for Mia, sample collection for Ethan, follicle monitoring to track Mia's ovulation. It felt surreal, reducing something as significant as creating life down to appointments and procedures. On the drive home, Mia was even quieter than before. "Talk to me," Ethan said. "I'm scared it won't work." "It might not right away. And if it doesn't work at all, then we tried. That's more than most people do." She looked at him. "You're very calm about this." "I'm good at pretending." That got a small smile out of her. "Me too." They drove in silence for a while longer before Mia spoke again. "Thank you for doing this. I know I keep saying it, but I mean it. You didn't have to agree. You had every reason to tell me no." "Yeah, I did." "So why didn't you?" Ethan thought about that. About the real reasons beneath the practical ones, about loneliness and connection, and the weird way life sometimes gave you second chances when you least expected them. Because I wanted to, he said finally. Not just for you, for me too. For Lucas, for... He paused. I don't know exactly, but it felt right. Mia reached over and squeezed his hand briefly before pulling back. I'm glad it was you I asked. Me too. E.T. The tests came back positive. Both of them were medically cleared to proceed. No issues that would prevent conception. No red flags. Good chances all around, according to Dr. Chen. They scheduled the first IUI for early March. In the weeks leading up to it, something shifted between them. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in small increments that added up to something neither of them had names for yet. Dinners became daily instead of occasional. Mia started keeping spare clothes at Ethan's place because she ended up there so often. They fell into routines without discussing them. She'd cook, he'd clean up. He'd help Lucas with homework while she prepped vegetables. They'd watch TV together after Lucas went to bed, sitting closer on the couch each night. Ethan started noticing things. The way Mia hummed while she cooked, how she always made her tea too hot and then forgot about it until it went cold. The small scar on her wrist from a childhood bike accident. The fact that she read mystery novels but always figured out the ending halfway through and got annoyed about it. And he started wanting to know more. They talked more too. Real conversations that went beyond logistics and medical appointments. Mia told him about growing up in a small town in Idaho, about her parents dying when she was in college, about meeting David at a bookstore where they both reached for the same novel. Ethan told her about building his company, about the stress and the impossible hours, and wondering if it was all worth it, about Caroline's diagnosis and the year of treatment that didn't work, about learning to be a single father while trying not to fall apart. Do you ever feel guilty? Mia asked one night. About moving forward? All the time. Me too, like I'm betraying their memory by not staying frozen in that grief. Ethan looked at her. You think that's what they'd want? For us to stop living? No, but knowing that and feeling it are different things. Yeah, they are. Lucas started calling Mia by her first name instead of Miss Carter. Small thing, but it felt significant, like she'd crossed some invisible threshold from neighbor to something closer to family. One Saturday, Ethan took them both to the coast. Lucas wanted to see the tide pools, and Mia had mentioned she hadn't been to the ocean since moving to Oregon. They spent hours exploring the rocky beach, Lucas darting between pools, pointing out sea anemones and tiny crabs, while Mia and Ethan followed at a slower pace. He's fearless, Mia observed, watching Lucas climb over slippery rocks without hesitation. He gets that from his mom. Caroline was always jumping into things head first. Were you the cautious one? Usually. Someone had to be. Mia smiled. Emma was cautious. She'd spend 10 minutes analyzing a situation before deciding what to do. Drive me crazy sometimes, but I miss it. She paused. I miss everything about her. I know. Does it get easier, or does everyone just lie about that? Ethan considered the question seriously. It gets different. The sharp edges wear down, but you don't forget and you don't stop missing them. You just learn to carry it better. That's not very comforting. You asked for honesty. She laughed. Fair enough. They stayed until sunset, until Lucas was exhausted and covered in sand and protesting that he wasn't tired even as he yawned. On the drive home, he fell asleep in the back seat within minutes, and Ethan glanced over to find Mia watching the kid with an expression that made his chest tight. You okay? He asked quietly. Yeah, just thinking about what it'll be like. If this works? Scared? Excited. Scared. Both. That sounds about right. The first IU I took 15 minutes and felt both anticlimactic and monumental. Mia lay on the exam table while Dr. Chen walked them through each step with calm efficiency. Ethan sat in a chair next to her, holding her hand because she'd reached for his and he hadn't let go. All done, Dr. Chen said finally. You'll need to rest here for about 15 minutes, then you're free to go. The doctor left them alone. Mia was still gripping Ethan's hand. What now? She asked. Now we wait. I'm terrible at waiting. I've noticed. She looked at him, really looked at him. What are we doing, Ethan? What do you mean? This started as you helping me, but it doesn't feel like that anymore. He knew what she meant. felt it too. The way things had blurred from an arrangement into something messier, more complicated, more real. No, he agreed. It doesn't. Does that scare you? Yeah. Me too. They sat in that uncertainty for a moment before Mia spoke again. But I'm glad that it's not just transactional anymore. I know that probably makes everything more complicated, but I'm glad too. Her eyes searched his face. Really? Really? The timer on Dr. Chen's phone went off, signaling the 15 minutes were up. But neither of them moved yet. Ethan? Yeah? Whatever happens, thank you for seeing me, for not treating me like I was crazy. You're not crazy. Debatable. He smiled. Okay, maybe a little crazy, but in a good way. She squeezed his hand one more time before sitting up. Let's go home. Home. Not your place or the house. Home. And Ethan realized that's what it had become, for both of them. They didn't know yet if the procedure had worked. Wouldn't know for another 2 weeks at least. But sitting there in that sterile room, hands still linked, it felt like something had shifted regardless. Like they'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross. And maybe that wasn't such a bad thing after all. The 2-week wait felt like 2 years. Mia tried to act normal, tried not to obsess over every tiny sensation in her body, tried not to Google early pregnancy symptoms at 3 in the morning. She failed at all of it spectacularly. Every twinge, every moment of fatigue, every wave of nausea that could have just been anxiety, she cataloged it all, analyzing and reanalyzing until she drove herself half crazy. Ethan wasn't much better, though he hit it better. He threw himself into work with an intensity that made his assistant ask if everything was okay. Board meetings became a welcome distraction. Conference calls gave him something to focus on besides the calendar he kept checking, even though he knew exactly how many days were left. 13, then 12, then 11. Lucas noticed the tension, because of course he did. Kids always noticed. Why is everyone acting weird? He asked one night at dinner. Mia had cooked chicken stir-fry that none of them were really eating. No one's acting weird, Ethan said. You keep staring at nothing, and Mia keeps spacing out. Mia blinked, realized she'd been pushing rice around her plate for the past 5 minutes. Sorry, buddy, just tired. You're always tired now. Work's been busy. Lucas didn't look convinced, but he went back to eating. Ethan caught Mia's eye across the table, and she gave him a small, strained smile. The waiting was eating both of them alive. On day 9, Mia convinced herself it hadn't worked. She felt completely normal, no symptoms, no signs, nothing. Just the same grief and hope tangled together that she'd been carrying for weeks. Maybe I'm not meant to have this, she said to Ethan that night. They were on his couch, pretending to watch some crime show neither of them cared about. It's only been 9 days. I know, but I don't feel any different. Some people don't feel anything for weeks. And some people never feel anything because they're not pregnant. Ethan muted the TV. Where's this coming from? Mia pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around them. I'm scared I wanted this so badly that I convinced myself it was possible, and now reality is going to come crashing down, and I'll be right back where I started, alone, empty, stuck. You're not alone. You know what I mean. He did. He knew exactly what she meant because he'd felt the same way after Caroline died. That bone-deep terror that nothing would ever be okay again, that hoping for better was just setting yourself up for more pain. Come here, he said quietly. Mia hesitated, then shifted across the couch until she was close enough that Ethan could pull her into his side. She leaned into him, and he felt how tense she was, every muscle tight with anxiety. Whatever happens, he said, we deal with it. Together. Okay? Okay. They sat like that for a long time, Mia gradually relaxing against him, while some detective on TV solved a murder they weren't watching. It should have felt weird, this physical closeness with someone who'd started as basically a stranger. But it didn't. It felt right in a way Ethan had stopped believing things could feel right. Ethan? Yeah? Thank you for not giving up on this. On me. I'm not going to. You say that now. I mean it. She tilted her head to look up at him. Why? You could have walked away a dozen times. This is messy and complicated and probably insane. Yeah, it is. So why are you still here? The honest answer lodged in his throat. Because somewhere between that first desperate conversation and now, this had stopped being just about helping her. It had become about him too. About Lucas. About the possibility of building something real out of all this broken grief they'd both been carrying. But saying that out loud felt too big, too soon, too much. Because I want to be, he said instead. It was true, even if it wasn't the whole truth. Mia studied his face for a long moment, then nodded and settled back against him. Good. Day 14 finally arrived. Mia was supposed to take a home pregnancy test first thing in the morning. Then they'd go to the clinic for blood work to confirm. She'd bought 3 different brands of tests, then bought 3 more because apparently that's what anxiety looked like. 9 pregnancy tests lined up on her bathroom counter like tiny soldiers. She texted Ethan at 6 a.m. Can't do this alone. Can you come over? He was there in 5 minutes, still in sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair sticking up in 3 directions. Lucas was still asleep, and Ethan had left a note on the kitchen counter in case he woke up. Mia let him in without a word, and they stood in her tiny bathroom staring at the tests. 9? Ethan asked. Shut up. I didn't say anything. You were thinking it. He was, but he kept his mouth shut and picked up one of the boxes. Which one do you want to use first? I don't know. Does it matter? Probably not. Mia grabbed one at random, tore it open with shaking hands. Okay, I'm doing this. Want me to leave? No, just turn around. Ethan faced the door while Mia did what needed to be done. He heard the rustle of packaging, the sound of her breathing too fast, then finally her voice. Okay, it's done. 3 minutes. He turned back around. Mia had set the test on the counter and was now pacing the small space like a caged animal. 2 steps one way, pivot, 2 steps back. You're going to wear a hole in the floor, Ethan said. I can't stand still. Okay. What if it's negative? Then we try again. What if I can't handle trying again? You can. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. She stopped pacing, looked at him with eyes that were too bright. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. Ethan crossed the small space between them, took her shoulders gently. You are. You've survived worse. You'll survive this too, whatever it says. But I want it so badly. I know. I want this to work so badly it physically hurts. I know, he said again, softer. Mia's phone timer went off. 3 minutes. They both froze. I can't look, Mia whispered. Want me to? She nodded, unable to speak. Ethan let go of her shoulders, walked to the counter, picked up the test. 2 lines. Clear as anything. Positive. His heart kicked against his ribs so hard it almost hurt. He looked at Mia, who was standing there with her hands pressed over her mouth, eyes wide and terrified and hopeful all at once. Well, she managed. He held up the test so she could see. For a second, Mia just stared. Then her knees buckled. Ethan caught her before she went down, and suddenly she was crying, huge, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. He held on tight while she fell apart, while months and years of grief and hope and desperation all came pouring out at once. It's positive, she kept saying between sobs. It's actually positive. Yeah, it is. Oh my God. We still need to confirm with blood work. I know, but... She pulled back enough to look at him, face blotchy and wet and radiant. Ethan, it worked. He found himself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in longer than he could remember. It did. She laughed through the tears, grabbed his face with both hands, and kissed him. It was quick, spontaneous, born of pure joy and relief. But the second their lips touched, something shifted. Mia froze. Ethan froze. They pulled apart, staring at each other with matching expressions of surprise. I'm sorry, Mia said immediately. I wasn't thinking. It's fine. That was inappropriate. Mia, it's fine. They stood there in her cramped bathroom, the positive pregnancy test still in Ethan's hand, the air between them charged with something new and electric and terrifying. We should go to the clinic, Mia said finally, voice unsteady. Yeah, we should. Neither of them moved. Then Ethan's phone buzzed. Lucas, awake and wondering where he was. Reality crashed back in. I need to get back, Ethan said. But I'll meet you at the clinic? 10 o'clock? 10 o'clock, Mia echoed. He left, walking back across the street in the early morning light, and tried not to think about the kiss. Tried not to think about how natural it had felt. How right. This was already complicated enough. The blood work confirmed what the test had shown. Mia was pregnant. Early, very early, but definitely pregnant. Dr. Chen smiled warmly, congratulated them, scheduled the first ultrasound for 6 weeks, and rattled off a list of do's and don'ts that Mia frantically typed into her phone. In the car afterward, they sat in silence. "So this is really happening," Mia said. "Yeah. I'm going to have a baby." "You are?" She turned to look at him. "Are you okay with this? Really okay?" Ethan thought about it, about what this meant going forward, about the life they'd just created together, the responsibility, the uncertainty of how this would all unfold. "Yeah," he said honestly, "I am. Even though everything's about to get way more complicated, especially because of that." Mia laughed, but it was shaky. "You're weird. You asked a near stranger to father your child. You don't get to call me weird." "Fair point." They drove back toward Eugene, and Ethan noticed Mia kept touching her stomach. Just small, unconscious gestures, like she was trying to confirm it was real. "When are you going to tell Lucas?" she asked. That question had been rattling around in Ethan's head since they left the clinic. "I don't know. Soon, I guess. He'll figure it out eventually anyway." "How do you think he'll react?" "Honestly, no idea. He's been asking for a sibling for years, but I don't know if he understood what that actually meant." "Is he going to be okay with me being pregnant?" Ethan glanced at her. "Why wouldn't he be? Because I'm not his mom. Because this might feel like I'm trying to replace her or something. Lucas doesn't think like that. He likes you. But this is different." "Yeah, it is, but we'll figure it out." Mia didn't look entirely convinced, but she nodded. They fell into silence again, both processing in their own ways. That evening, Ethan sat Lucas down for a talk. They were in the living room, Lucas building something elaborate with Legos, while Ethan tried to figure out how to start this conversation. All his business negotiation skills were completely useless here. "Buddy, I need to tell you something." Lucas looked up, immediately suspicious. "What did I do?" "Nothing. You're not in trouble." "Then why do you look nervous?" Ethan almost laughed. "Because this is important, and I want to tell you the right way." "Okay." Lucas set down the Lego piece he'd been holding, giving Ethan his full attention. 6 years old and already reading people better than most adults. "You know how you've been asking for a brother or sister?" Lucas's eyes went huge. "Are you and Mia getting married?" "What? No, I mean, not exactly. It's complicated." "Adults always say that when they don't want to explain things." "You're too smart for your own good, you know that?" Lucas grinned. "Mom used to say that." The mention of Caroline made Ethan's chest tight, but in a good way. She'd be okay with this, he thought. She'd probably think it was insane, but she'd be okay with it. "Mia's going to have a baby," Ethan said carefully, "and that baby is going to be your brother or sister." Lucas processed this for a long moment. "But you're not married to Mia." "No." "Can you have a baby without being married?" "Yes. It's not traditional, but yes." "Is the baby going to live here?" "I don't know yet. We're still figuring things out." "Is Mia going to live here?" Maybe? We haven't talked about it." Lucas tilted his head, considering. Tommy's parents are divorced and he has 2 houses. Is it going to be like that? Maybe, or maybe something different. The important thing is that you're going to have a sibling, and that's good, right? "I guess." Lucas paused. "Will you still have time for me?" And there it was, the real fear beneath all the questions. Ethan pulled Lucas close. "Always, you're my son. Nothing changes that, not a new baby, not anything. Promise?" "Promise." Lucas hugged him tight, and Ethan felt the kid's small body relax. "Okay, can it be a sister? Tommy has a brother and they fight all the time." Ethan laughed despite everything. "We don't get to choose, but I'll see what I can do." That night, after Lucas was asleep, Mia came over. She'd clearly been anxious all day, waiting to hear how Lucas took the news. "He okay?" she asked. The second Ethan opened the door. "He's fine. Mostly worried about whether he'll still get enough attention." "And?" I told him nothing's changing between us. Mia nodded, but she looked uncertain. Can I ask you something? Always. What happens now? With us, I mean. This started as me asking for help, but it's turned into something else, and I don't know what to call it. Ethan gestured for her to come inside. They ended up in the kitchen because that's where all their important conversations seemed to happen. He poured them both water they wouldn't drink, then leaned against the counter. I don't know what to call it either, he admitted, but I know I care about you, and I know this isn't just about the baby anymore. It's not? Is it for you? Mia looked down at her hands. No. Somewhere along the way, this became real. The dinners, the conversations, the way you are with Lucas, the way you've been with me. She looked up. I didn't expect to feel like this. Feel like what? Like maybe I could be happy again. Like maybe I'm not broken beyond repair. Ethan crossed the distance between them. You were never broken. You were grieving. There's a difference. Sometimes it's hard to tell. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture felt intimate in a way that should have scared him, but didn't. What do you want this to be? I don't know. I'm terrified of wanting too much and ruining what we have. What if wanting more doesn't ruin it? What if it does? What if it doesn't? Mia smiled slightly. You're very annoying when you're being logical. It's one of my many talents. They stood close, not quite touching, the space between them humming with possibility and uncertainty. Then Mia did something brave. She closed the distance, went up on her toes, and kissed him. Not like the spontaneous kiss that morning. This one was deliberate, tentative, asking a question. Ethan answered by pulling her closer, kissing her back with 4 years of loneliness and longing behind it. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Okay, Mia whispered. Okay, I want this. Whatever this is, I want to try. Even though it's messy? Especially because it's messy. Ethan rested his forehead against hers. We're doing this backward, you know? Usually people fall for each other first, then have a baby. We've never been very traditional. No, we haven't. They stood there in his kitchen, holding each other, two broken people who'd somehow found a way to fit their jagged edges together. The weeks that followed were strange and wonderful and terrifying. Mia had morning sickness that turned out to be all-day sickness. She'd show up for dinner looking pale and exhausted, force down half a meal, then spend 20 minutes in the bathroom while Ethan and Lucas tried to pretend they couldn't hear her getting sick. Is Mia okay? Lucas asked one night. She's fine, just pregnancy stuff. Pregnancy makes you throw up? Sometimes. Lucas wrinkled his nose. That's gross. Yeah, it kind of is. But despite the sickness, Mia seemed lighter. She smiled more, laughed easier, had fewer shadows in her eyes. The pregnancy was hard on her body, but good for her soul, and watching that transformation was something Ethan hadn't expected to find so moving. They hadn't told anyone else yet. Mia wanted to wait until the first trimester was over, some superstitious fear that saying it out loud too soon would jinx it. Ethan understood. He'd felt the same way when Caroline was pregnant with Lucas. Work became background noise. Ethan delegated more, worked from home when he could, made it clear to his team that his hours were non-negotiable now. A few board members grumbled, but his company was successful enough that they couldn't complain too much. His assistant, Margaret, who'd worked with him for 6 years and knew him better than most people, cornered him after a video conference. What's going on with you? Nothing? Why? You're smiling more. You're leaving early. You actually took a personal call during the investor meeting last week. She crossed her arms. So either you're having a breakdown or something good is happening. Can it just be nothing? With you? No. Ethan sighed. I'm seeing someone. Sort of. Sort of? It's complicated. Margaret's eyes narrowed. Is this the woman from across the street? The one who's been around more? How do you... Lucas talks. A lot. Mentioned Mia about 15 times last week during our call. He did? Yes, so spill. Ethan gave her the abbreviated version, leaving out the part about the baby. Margaret listened, expression shifting from curious to surprised to something softer. You deserve this, she said when he finished. You've been alone too long. It's only been 4 years. 4 years is a long time. And from what Lucas says, this woman makes you happy. That matters. Did Mia make him happy? Ethan thought about it, about the way his chest felt lighter when she was around, about looking forward to coming home instead of dreading the emptiness, about Lucas's excitement every time she showed up. Yeah, he said quietly. She does. Margaret smiled. Good, don't screw it up. I'll try not to. The first ultrasound was at 6 weeks. Ethan took the afternoon off and met Mia at the clinic. She was nervous, fidgeting with her phone, bouncing her leg in the waiting room until Ethan put his hand on her knee to stop it. Sorry, she muttered. It's fine. What if something's wrong? Then we deal with it. You keep saying that. Because it's true. They were called back and Mia changed into a gown while Ethan tried not to pace the small exam room. Dr. Chen came in with the ultrasound tech, all smiles and calm efficiency. Ready to see your baby? She asked. Mia nodded, couldn't speak. The tech squeezed gel on Mia's stomach, positioned the wand, and the monitor flickered to life. Grainy black and white images that Ethan couldn't make sense of at first. Then the tech pointed. There, see that flicker? A tiny flutter on the screen, impossibly small, barely visible. That's the heartbeat, the tech said. Mia made a sound, half sob, half laugh. Her hand shot out and grabbed Ethan's, squeezing so hard it hurt. He didn't care. He was staring at that tiny flicker, that proof of life they'd created, and feeling something huge expand in his chest. Strong heartbeat, Dr. Chen said. Everything looks good so far. The tech took measurements, pointed out the gestational sac, explained what they were seeing. Ethan heard maybe half of it. He was too focused on Mia's face, the tears streaming down her cheeks, the smile she couldn't contain, the sheer joy radiating from her. That's my baby, she whispered. Your baby, Dr. Chen confirmed. Can you print the pictures? Of course. They left with 3 grainy ultrasound photos and more prenatal vitamins. In the car, Mia stared at the pictures like they might disappear. I can't believe it's real, she said. It's real. I have a baby. Inside me. Right now. Growing. Ethan smiled. Yes, that's generally how pregnancy works. She swatted his arm but couldn't stop smiling. Don't be a smartass. Let me be amazed. Fair enough? That night they showed Lucas the ultrasound photo. He squinted at it, clearly trying to figure out what he was looking at. It doesn't look like a baby. That's because it's really small right now, Mia explained. About the size of a sweet pea. That's tiny. It'll get bigger. Lucas studied the photo more, then looked up at Mia with those serious eyes that made him seem older than 6. Are you going to be okay? You're sick a lot. I'm okay. The sickness is normal. Promise? Promise. He seemed satisfied with that, went back to examining the photo. Can I keep this? To show my friends? Mia glanced at Ethan, who shrugged. Sure, buddy. We have extras. Lucas carefully took the photo, held it like it was precious. I'm going to tell everyone I'm going to be a big brother. After Lucas went to bed, Ethan and Mia sat on the porch. The night was cool but not cold. Early spring trying to decide if it wanted to commit to warmth yet. He's really excited, Mia said. Yeah, more than I expected, honestly. Think he'll still be excited when the baby actually gets here and cries all night? Probably not, but we'll deal with that when it happens. Mia pulled her jacket tighter. I should probably start thinking about logistics. Where the baby's going to sleep, what I need to buy, how I'm going to afford childcare when I go back to work. Or, Ethan said carefully, you could move in here. Mia went very still. What? You're here most nights anyway. Lucas is attached to you. It would make things easier, especially once the baby comes. He paused. Unless you don't want to. That's a big step. Yeah, it is. Are you sure? I wouldn't offer if I wasn't. Mia looked at him in the dim porch light. What are we doing, Ethan? Really? Because this started as you helping me have a baby, but now you're asking me to move in, and we're whatever we are, and I need to know what you're thinking. Ethan took a breath. Time for honesty, even if it was scary. I'm thinking that somewhere along the way I fell for you. I'm thinking Lucas is happier when you're around, and so am I. I'm thinking this baby deserves to have both of us present, not split between 2 houses. He met her eyes. I'm thinking I want this to be real. All of it. Like a family? Yeah, like a family. Mia was quiet for a long time. Then, I'm scared. Of what? Of wanting this too much. Of building something and then losing it again. I don't think I could survive that twice. You won't have to. You can't promise that. No, I can't. But I can promise I'm not going anywhere. I can promise I'll show up every day and try my hardest to make this work. He reached for her hand. That's all any of us can promise. She laced her fingers through his. Okay. Okay? I'll move in. We'll try this. All of it. Relief flooded through him. Yeah? Yeah, but if you get sick of me throwing up every morning, you can't take it back. He laughed. Deal. They sat there holding hands, looking out at the quiet street, two people who'd been drowning separately and somehow found a way to keep each other afloat. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't simple. But it was real. And that was enough. Mia moved in the following week. She didn't have much. A decade of living on poverty wages meant most of her possessions fit in Ethan's SUV in 2 trips. He gave her the guest room to set up however she wanted, but she ended up spending most nights in his bed anyway, curled into his side like she was afraid he'd disappear if she let go. Lucas adjusted faster than expected. He helped Mia unpack, appointed himself official tour guide of the house, and started calling her Mia instead of Miss Mia, which felt significant somehow. Life settled into a new rhythm. Mornings were chaos. Mia sick in the bathroom, Ethan trying to get Lucas ready for school, everyone running late. Evenings were better. Dinner together, homework at the kitchen table, Mia reading to Lucas before bed while Ethan cleaned up. It felt like family, not the family Ethan had before, not the family Mia had lost, but something new, built from broken pieces that somehow fit together. And for the first time in years, the future didn't feel like something to survive. It felt like something to look forward to. The 2 weeks that followed felt like the longest stretch of time Ethan had ever experienced, and he'd lived through quarterly earnings reports that seemed to last forever. Every day crawled by with an excruciating slowness that no amount of work or distraction could fix. Mia was worse. She checked symptoms obsessively on her phone, analyzed every tiny change in how she felt, convinced herself it had worked, and then that it hadn't about 17 times a day. I think I felt something, she said one evening, hand pressed to her stomach. Ethan looked up from where he was loading the dishwasher. It's been 6 days. You wouldn't feel anything yet. You don't know that. Mia, biology doesn't work that fast. She glared at him, but there was no real heat in it. Let me have this. Have what? Phantom symptoms? Hope. Let me have hope. He dried his hands on a towel, walked over to where she sat at the kitchen island. You can have hope without driving yourself crazy, analyzing every twinge. I'm not driving myself crazy? You Googled early pregnancy symptoms 43 times yesterday. You were counting? Your search history is still logged in on my laptop from when you used it. Mia buried her face in her hands. I'm being ridiculous. Little bit. I just want to know. I know. Ethan pulled out the stool next to her. But we have to wait. That's part of this. She looked at him through her fingers. You're annoyingly rational about everything. One of us has to be. I hate it. No, you don't. She dropped her hands, managed a small smile. No, I don't. Lucas wandered in from the living room, carrying a drawing he'd been working on for the past hour. He held it up proudly, a crayon rendering of what appeared to be 3 stick figures and a dog, though the proportions were wildly off. Who's this? Ethan asked, pointing to the tallest figure. That's you, and that's me, and that's Mia. Lucas pointed to each in turn. And that's the dog we're going to get. We're not getting a dog. But Dad, we've talked about this. Dogs are a lot of work. Lucas's face fell in that devastating way only 6-year-olds could manage. Mia intervened before the kid could really get going. What kind of dog? She asked. A big one, like a lab or something. They're good with kids. They are, Mia agreed. But your dad's right. They need a lot of attention. We could give it attention. We're home all the time now. Lucas looked between them with those big eyes that Ethan had never learned to resist properly. We'll think about it, Ethan said, knowing he was caving and unable to stop himself. Really? Maybe, someday. Don't hold your breath. Lucas grinned like he'd won a major victory and ran back to the living room. Mia was fighting a smile. "You're so easy," she said. "Shut up. He played you like a violin. He gets that from his mother, too. Caroline could convince me of anything if she tried hard enough." Mia's expression softened. She must have been something. She was. Ethan looked at the drawing Lucas had left on the counter. 3 stick figures. A family. "But so are you." The words came out before he could think about them, honest and unfiltered. Mia went still, looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Ethan, I mean it. You're—" He stopped, trying to find the right words. "You're brave. And kind. And stubborn as hell when you want something. And I'm glad you knocked on my door that night. Even though I asked you for something insane, especially because of that." They held each other's gaze for a long moment, something unspoken hanging between them. Then Mia looked away, tucking hair behind her ear in a nervous gesture he'd come to recognize. "This is getting complicated," she said quietly. "Yeah. I don't know what we're doing anymore." "Me neither." "Does that scare you?" Ethan thought about it, really thought about how she'd become part of his daily routine, how Lucas lit up when she walked in the door, how the house felt wrong on the rare evenings she wasn't there. "Not as much as it probably should," he admitted. Mia nodded slowly, processing that. "We should probably talk about it." "Probably. But not right now." "No, not right now. Because right now they were still in limbo, waiting to see if the procedure had worked, if this whole crazy thing they'd started had actually resulted in what they'd hoped for. Adding relationship definitions on top of that felt like tempting fate. So they didn't talk about it. They just kept existing in the space they'd created, somewhere between arrangement and something else entirely. The pregnancy test was scheduled for day 14. Dr. Chen had been clear that testing earlier would likely give false results, so they had to wait the full 2 weeks no matter how much Mia wanted to cheat and buy a drugstore test. "The clinic test is more accurate," Ethan reminded her for the 5th time. "I know. So wait. I am waiting. I'm just complaining about it. Loudly. Would you prefer I complain quietly? I'd prefer you didn't make yourself sick with anxiety." Mia sighed, slumping back against the couch. They were watching some cooking competition show that neither of them were really paying attention to. Lucas had gone to bed an hour ago, and the house had settled into that comfortable quiet that Ethan had come to associate with these evenings. "What happens if it didn't work?" Mia asked. "Then we try again." "And if that doesn't work?" "We try again." "Ethan, I'm serious. We didn't go into this thinking it would be one and done. Dr. Chen said it could take several cycles." "I know what she said, but what if it never works? What if I can't—" Her voice caught. "What if I'm not supposed to be a mother again?" Ethan turned to face her fully. "That's not how this works. Biology doesn't care about what you're supposed to do. Sometimes things take time, that's all." "You don't know that." "No. But I know giving up after one try is guaranteed to fail." She looked at him, eyes shining with unshed tears. "When did you become an optimist?" "I'm not. I'm a realist. And realistically, we have options if this doesn't work. We're not out of moves yet." Mia wiped at her eyes, laughing a little. "I'm a mess. You're human. Same thing." He reached over and took her hand without thinking about it, and she laced her fingers through his like it was the most natural thing in the world. They sat like that while the TV played, connected and quiet, and waiting for answers neither of them could control. Day 14 arrived with clear skies and a level of tension that made the air feel heavy. Ethan drove them to Portland again. Mia silent and pale in the passenger seat. She'd barely slept the night before. He knew because he'd heard her moving around the house at 3 a.m. when he got up to check on Lucas. "Whatever it is, we'll deal with it," he said. "I know." "Do you?" "I'm trying to." The clinic was busy, people in the waiting room at various stages of their own fertility journeys. Ethan watched Mia watch a heavily pregnant woman walk by, saw the longing and fear flicker across her face in equal measure. They called her back, drew blood, told them results would take a few hours. "We can wait here or come back," the nurse said. Mia looked at Ethan. He could see she couldn't handle sitting in that waiting room for hours, surrounded by hope and desperation in equal measure. "We'll come back," he said. They drove into downtown Portland, found a coffee shop that wasn't too crowded. Mia ordered tea she wouldn't drink. Ethan got coffee he didn't want. They sat by the window and pretended to be normal people having a normal day. "Tell me something," Mia said suddenly. "Like what?" "Anything. I need to think about something other than this." Ethan considered. "Lucas wants a dog." "I know, he told me yesterday. Very elaborate plans involving a lab named Captain." "Captain?" "After Captain America, obviously." That got a real smile out of Ethan. "Of course. Are you going to get him one?" "Maybe, eventually, when I'm ready to deal with puppy training and destroyed furniture." "So never?" "Probably never." They fell quiet again. Outside, people walked by bundled in coats, living their lives, having no idea that Ethan and Mia were sitting in this coffee shop waiting to find out if they'd created a life together. "I keep thinking about names," Mia said quietly. "Yeah? I know it's premature. I know I shouldn't get ahead of myself, but I can't help it." "What names?" She looked embarrassed. "If it's a girl, I was thinking about Rose, or maybe Claire. Something classic." "Those are nice." "And if it's a boy, I don't know, James maybe, or Henry." "Henry Vale," Ethan tested it out. "That works. You think so?" "I think we're getting way ahead of ourselves." "I know. But it helps. Thinking about the future. The good version." Ethan understood that. Hope as a coping mechanism. Future casting to avoid sitting with present uncertainty. "Rose Carter," he said. "That's good too." Mia's eyes went wide. "Carter? It's your last name, isn't it? I didn't know if... Mia, if this works, this is your baby. Your last name makes sense. But you're the father. Biologically, sure, but you're the one who's going to carry them, raise them. I'm helping, but this is yours." She looked like she might cry again. "We never talked about that part. We're talking about it now. What do you want in all this?" Ethan hadn't let himself think too hard about that question, hadn't wanted to examine his own motivations too closely. But sitting here with Mia, hours away from knowing if this had worked, he couldn't avoid it anymore. "I want Lucas to have a sibling," he said slowly. "I want you to be happy. I want..." He stopped, then pushed forward. "I want to stop feeling like I'm just going through the motions. I want this house to feel like a home again, and I think maybe this could help with that. For both of us." "That's a lot to put on one hypothetical baby." "Yeah, probably unfair. But honest. I'm trying to be." Mia reached across the table, took his hand. "Me too." They stayed there until it was time to go back to the clinic, fingers intertwined, two people hoping for something they couldn't guarantee. The nurse called them back to a consultation room. Dr. Chen came in a few minutes later with a tablet and an expression that gave nothing away. Ethan felt Mia tense next to him. "So," Dr. Chen said, sitting down, "we have your results." "And?" Mia's voice was barely a whisper. Dr. Chen smiled. "Congratulations. You're pregnant." The world tilted sideways for a second. Ethan heard Mia make a sound, half sob, half laugh. And then she was crying for real, hands covering her face as her whole body shook. "We'll want to monitor levels over the next few weeks to make sure everything is progressing normally," Dr. Chen continued. "But your HCG numbers look good. Very good, actually." Ethan couldn't speak, couldn't process, just sat there while Mia cried and the doctor talked about next steps and follow-up appointments and all the practical details that suddenly mattered in a completely different way. It had worked. They'd actually done it. "Thank you," Mia was saying through her tears. "Thank you so much." Dr. Chen handed her tissues, gave them both time to process. Eventually, they made it through the necessary scheduling and information, then found themselves back in Ethan's car, sitting in the parking lot. Mia hadn't stopped crying. "Hey," Ethan said softly. "You okay?" "I'm pregnant." "Yeah. We did it. We did." She turned to look at him, face blotchy and eyes red and smiling so wide it looked like it hurt. "Ethan, we actually did it." And then she was hugging him, arms around his neck, and Ethan hugged her back, feeling her shake with emotion against him. "Thank you," she whispered. I don't know how to ever thank you enough. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You gave me this. You gave me hope when I didn't think I had any left. Ethan pulled back enough to look at her face. We did this together. I know, but still. She wiped at her eyes. I'm going to be a mom again. You are. I'm terrified. Good. Means you'll pay attention. That made her laugh, and Ethan started the car, began the drive home. Mia kept her hand on her stomach the whole way, like she was protecting something precious. Which she was, he supposed. They didn't talk much on the drive. What was there to say that they hadn't already said? Everything had changed in that consultation room, shifted from hypothetical to real in the span of a single sentence. Mia was pregnant. With his child. The weight of that didn't fully hit Ethan until they pulled into his driveway and he saw Lucas's face in the front window waiting for them to get home. We should tell him, Mia said, following his gaze. You sure? He's going to be a big brother. He should know. Okay, but maybe simple. He's 6. I can do simple. They went inside to find Lucas playing with his Legos, but clearly distracted. He jumped up when they walked in. Did it work? He asked. Ethan blinked. How do you... I heard you talking to Mia about babies. I'm not stupid, Dad. We never said you were. Lucas looked between them expectantly. So? Did it work? Mia crouched down to his level. It did. I'm going to have a baby. So I'm getting a brother or sister? You are. In about 8 months. Lucas processed this information with the seriousness of a Supreme Court judge. Then he grinned. Cool. Can I tell my friends? Ethan and Mia exchanged glances. Maybe wait a bit, Ethan said. Let's make sure everything is okay first. How long? A few weeks? That's forever. You'll survive. Lucas looked like he wanted to argue but decided against it. Instead, he turned to Mia. Are you going to live here now? Mia faltered. I don't know. Your dad and I haven't talked about that. You should. You're here all the time anyway. Out of the mouths of babes. Ethan met Mia's eyes again and saw his own uncertainty reflected back. We'll figure it out, buddy, Ethan said. For now, how about we celebrate with pizza? Yes! Lucas was immediately distracted by the promise of food. Can we get the one with extra cheese? Sure. While Lucas ran to find the pizza place menu, Mia stood up, looked at Ethan. He's right, you know. About what? I am here all the time, and it's going to get complicated once I start showing. People will ask questions. Let them. Ethan, I don't want to make your life harder. You're not. He stopped, trying to find words for something he didn't fully understand himself. You're making it better, different, but better. Even with all the complications? Especially with those. She shook her head, but she was smiling. You're either very brave or very stupid. Can it be both? I found it! Lucas came running back with a crumpled menu. And I want breadsticks, too. Of course you do. They ordered dinner, ate it on the living room floor, while Lucas chattered about school and his friends and whether the baby would like Legos. It felt normal and surreal at the same time. Celebrating the biggest news of their lives with pizza and a 6-year-old's running commentary. After Lucas went to bed, Ethan and Mia ended up on the porch again. It had become their spot, the place where real conversations happened. This is really happening, Mia said. Yeah. I keep waiting to wake up. I know the feeling. She was quiet for a moment, then, what are we, Ethan? There it was, the question they'd been dancing around for weeks. I don't know, he admitted. This started as me helping you, but somewhere along the way it became something else. Something more. Yeah. Does that scare you? Honestly? Yes. Because I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be what you need while also being what Lucas needs while also running a company, and now there's a baby coming and... He stopped, realized he was spiraling. Sorry. Don't apologize. I'm scared too. Mia pulled her knees up to her chest. I didn't expect to feel this way about you. I thought it would be simple. You'd help me get pregnant and then we'd figure out co-parenting or whatever, but it's not simple anymore. No, it's not. I think I'm falling for you. The words hung in the air between them, honest and terrifying. Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone who'd become essential without him quite noticing when it happened. I think I'm falling for you too, he said. Mia let out a shaky breath. What do we do about that? I have no idea. That's not comforting. You keep saying you want honesty. I do, but maybe a little reassurance would be nice too. Ethan moved closer, took her hand. Here's what I know. I like having you here. Lucas likes having you here. And I don't want to go back to how things were before you knocked on my door. Even though it's messy, especially because it's messy, perfect is boring. That got a laugh out of her. This is definitely not boring. So maybe we just keep going, see where this leads? No grand plan? Do you want a grand plan? Mia thought about it. No, I want this. Whatever this is. Okay then. Just like that? Just like that. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and Ethan wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. They sat there in the darkness. Two broken people who'd somehow found a way to start healing together, with a baby on the way and no idea what they were doing, but willing to figure it out anyway. Ethan? Yeah? I'm really happy. Me too. And he meant it. For the first time in 4 years, sitting on his porch, with Mia tucked against his side, and a future taking shape that he'd never planned for, Ethan felt something like genuine happiness settle into his chest. It was terrifying and wonderful and completely uncertain. But it was real. And that was enough. The weeks that followed brought a strange new rhythm to their lives. Mia had morning sickness, or more accurately, all-day sickness, that left her exhausted and nauseous. Ethan found himself learning about ginger tea and saltine crackers, and which foods she could tolerate at which times of day. He also found himself being more present at home, delegating more at work, rearranging his schedule around her appointments. His executive team noticed, but didn't comment, probably because he'd been slowly shifting toward better work-life balance for months now, anyway. Lucas was excited, but also confused about the timeline. When is the baby coming? He asked every few days. Not for a while, buddy. But when? October, probably. That's forever. 8 months is not forever. It is when you're 6. Fair point. Mia moved more of her things into Ethan's house gradually, without them ever having an explicit conversation about it. A toothbrush appeared in the bathroom, then clothes in the closet, then her favorite coffee mug in the kitchen. By week 8 of the pregnancy, she was essentially living there, going back to her rental only to check mail and keep up appearances for her landlord. I should probably just give up the place, she said one evening. Do you want to? I don't know. It feels like admitting something. Like what? That this is permanent, that I'm not just crashing here temporarily. Ethan looked at her over the top of his laptop. They were both working at the kitchen island, her on freelance data entry, him on quarterly projections. Mia, you're pregnant with my child. I think we're past temporary. I know, but the lease feels different somehow, more official. So make it official. Just like that? Why not? She chewed on her lip, thinking, what if this doesn't work out? Then you find a new place. But planning for failure seems counterproductive. I'm not planning for failure. I'm being realistic. You're catastrophizing. Same thing. Not even close. Mia closed her laptop, gave him her full attention. What do you want, Ethan? Really? I want you to stop second-guessing everything. That's not an answer. Yes, it is. He closed his own laptop, mirrored her position. I want you here. I want to do this together, the pregnancy, the baby, whatever comes after. I want Lucas to have stability and family, and I want to stop feeling like I'm just surviving day to day. And I think we can have that, if you stop looking for reasons it won't work. I'm not. You are. You've been waiting for the other shoe to drop since we started this. Mia was quiet for a long moment. Can you blame me? Everything I've ever loved has been taken away. I'm not taking anything away. Not intentionally, but life happens, Ethan. People leave, people die, things fall apart. They also come together sometimes. Do they? We did. She didn't have an answer for that, just looked at him with those eyes that carried too much loss and not enough trust that good things could last. Give up the lease, Ethan said softly. Move in properly. Let's stop pretending this is temporary and see what happens when we commit to it being real. You're asking me to move in. I'm asking you to stop living in limbo. That's not the same thing, isn't it? Mia stood up, paced to the window, looked out at the street. Her old rental was visible from here, small and dark and empty looking. Okay, she said finally. Okay? I'll give up the lease. I'll move in, properly. Ethan felt something loosen in his chest that he hadn't realized was tight. Yeah? Yeah. But if this blows up in our faces, I'm blaming you. Fair enough. She turned back to face him, and there was a tentative smile on her face. I can't believe I'm doing this. Which part? All of it. Moving in with you, having a baby, building a life with someone I barely knew 6 months ago. When you put it like that, it does sound crazy. It is crazy, but you're doing it anyway. I'm doing it anyway. Ethan stood up, crossed the kitchen to where she stood. He'd gotten comfortable touching her over the past weeks, hand-holding, arms around shoulders, casual affection that had become second nature. But this felt different, more intentional. He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. I'm glad you knocked on my door. You've said that before. I'll probably say it again. Why? Because it's true. Because you changed everything. Because I didn't know how empty my life was until you filled it up. Mia's eyes were shining. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. Really? That's the bar? Shut up and kiss me. So he did. And it felt like everything clicking into place at once, like this was what they'd been building towards since that first desperate conversation, since all the dinners and late-night talks and gradual collision of their lives. When they finally pulled apart, Mia was smiling. Well, she said, I guess we're really doing this. All of it. The baby, the moving in, the relationship that we've been pretending wasn't a relationship. All of it. Okay then. Okay. They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other, and Ethan thought about how strange life was, how it could take everything away and then give you something completely different in return if you were brave enough to reach for it. He'd lost Caroline. Mia had lost David and Emma. They'd both been hollowed out by grief and loneliness, but somehow, impossibly, they'd found each other. And maybe that was enough to build on. Maybe that was more than enough. Moving Mia's belongings out of the rental took less time than Ethan expected. She didn't have much. A decade of loss and financial struggle had taught her to travel light. A few boxes of clothes, some kitchen items she was attached to, books that had survived multiple moves, and a single photo album she handled like it might shatter. That's everything? Ethan asked, loading the last box into his truck. That's everything. Mia looked back at the empty apartment, keys still in her hand. Feels weird. I've lived here for 2 years. Any regrets? About leaving? No. About how little I accumulated? Maybe. Lucas was helping, or trying to, by carrying a box of books that was probably too heavy for him, but he refused to admit it. He staggered past them toward the truck, face red with effort. Need help, buddy? Ethan called. I got it. He's going to drop it, Mia said quietly. Probably, but he needs to figure that out himself. Sure enough, Lucas made it 3 more steps before the box slipped from his grip and hit the pavement. Books scattered everywhere. The kid stood there looking devastated. Mia moved before Ethan could, crouching next to Lucas. Hey, it's okay. Let's just pick them up. I said I could do it. And you almost did. That box was heavy. Even your dad would have trouble with it. Really? Lucas looked at Ethan for confirmation. Really? Those are hardcovers. Probably 30 pounds at least. Lucas seemed somewhat mollified by this. He helped Mia gather the books back into the box, and this time Ethan carried it to the truck while Lucas supervised. By noon, they had everything moved in. Mia's belongings barely made a dent in Ethan's house. The guest room closet absorbed most of her clothes, her kitchen stuff integrated into cabinets that had too much space anyway. The books went on shelves that had been mostly empty. It's like I was never here, Mia said, standing in what used to be her living room. You were here. You survived here. That counts for something. I guess. They drove back to Ethan's place, their place now, he supposed, and spent the afternoon helping Mia settle in properly. Lucas insisted on showing her where everything was, even though she'd been living there for weeks already. And this is the good cereal, he said, pointing to a cabinet. And this is where Dad hides the cookies he thinks I don't know about. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You know about those. Dad, they're in the same spot they've always been. You're not sneaky. Apparently not. Mia was laughing, and Ethan found himself just watching her, the way she looked more relaxed than he'd seen her in months. How she'd stopped carrying herself like she was ready to bolt at any second. That night after Lucas was asleep, they sat in the living room with the TV on, but neither of them watching it. Mia had her feet tucked under her on the couch, hand resting on her stomach, even though there was nothing to feel yet. 12 weeks tomorrow, she said. End of the first trimester. Dr. Chen said the risk of miscarriage drops significantly after that. I know. I'm scared to believe it's real. Ethan shifted closer, pulled her against his side. It's real. You're really pregnant. We're really doing this. I threw up 4 times this morning. I heard. Very real. She elbowed him gently. Not funny. Little bit funny. I hate you. No, you don't. No, I don't. She tilted her head back to look at him. Thank you for today, for helping me move, for making this easy. It should be easy. Nothing in my life has been easy for a long time. Well, get used to it. I'm excellent at making things easy. Mia snorted. You run a tech company. Nothing about your life is easy. Fair point, but I'm good at making other people's lives easier. Delegate, automate, eliminate, that's my whole philosophy. You can't delegate pregnancy. No, but I can handle everything else, so you don't have to. She was quiet for a moment, then, I'm not used to being taken care of. I've noticed. It makes me uncomfortable. Also noticed. But I'm trying to let you help, to not feel like I have to do everything myself. Ethan kissed the top of her head. That's all I'm asking. They stayed like that, tangled together on the couch, until Mia started falling asleep sitting up. Ethan guided her to bed, the guest room still, even though they'd kissed, even though they'd admitted feelings, because some things needed to happen gradually, and Mia still needed her own space. Good night, she mumbled, already half asleep. Good night. He stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her curl into the blankets, and thought about how quickly life could change. 6 months ago, she was a struggling neighbor he barely knew. Now she was pregnant with his child, living in his house, and he couldn't imagine the place without her. The 12-week ultrasound happened on a Tuesday. Ethan had cleared his entire afternoon, ignored 3 urgent emails from his CFO, and drove them to Portland with a knot of nerves in his stomach he couldn't quite explain. You okay? Mia asked. Fine. Why? You've checked your mirrors like 15 times in the last mile. I always check my mirrors. Not like that. Ethan forced himself to relax his grip on the steering wheel. I'm nervous. About what? What if something's wrong? Dr. Chen said everything looked good at the last appointment. I know, but still. Mia reached over and squeezed his hand. We're going to see our baby today. Try to enjoy it. Our baby. The word still sounded surreal. The ultrasound tech was a cheerful woman named Monica who talked them through everything as she moved the wand across Mia's gel-covered stomach. Ethan stared at the screen, trying to make sense of the black and white images. There's the head, Monica said, pointing, and there's the spine. Good, strong heartbeat. Would you like to hear it? Yes, Mia said immediately. The room filled with a rapid whooshing sound, impossibly fast. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. That was a heartbeat. That was a person. That was real. Everything looks great, Monica continued. Good size for 12 weeks. All the measurements are right on track. Really? Mia's voice was tight with emotion. Really? You've got a healthy baby in there. Tears were streaming down Mia's face, but she was smiling. Ethan found his own eyes getting wet and didn't bother wiping them away. Do you want pictures? Monica asked. Please. She printed out several ultrasound images, tiny gray blobs that somehow meant everything. Ethan stared at them while Mia cleaned the gel off her stomach, memorizing the shape of their child. In the car afterward, Mia held the pictures carefully, like they might disappear. That was real, she said. Yeah. We made that. We did. Ethan, we made a person. He glanced over at her, saw wonder and terror and joy all mixed together on her face. How are you feeling? Overwhelmed, happy, scared, all of it at once. That sounds about right. When do we tell people, like officially? Whenever you want. Mia thought about it. Lucas already knows. We should probably tell your family. And I should call David's sister. We've been out of touch, but she'd want to know. You don't have to tell her. I do. She's the only family I have left, even if we don't talk much. Mia looked down at the ultrasound pictures. She'll probably think I'm crazy. Are you crazy? Definitely. Then she'll be right. That got a laugh out of her. Thanks for the support. Anytime. They stopped for lunch on the way home, a small diner that served breakfast all day. Mia ordered pancakes and actually ate them, first meal she'd kept down all week. Ethan counted it as a victory. I want to do the nursery, she said suddenly. Okay. Like, really do it. Paint, furniture, the whole thing. We have time. I know, but I want to start. I want to make it real. Ethan understood. Nesting or preparing or whatever you wanted to call it, she needed tangible proof that this was happening, that she got to be a mother again. What colors? He asked. I don't know yet. Something warm, not the typical pink or blue thing. Yellow? Maybe. Or green, something that feels happy. We'll figure it out. They spent the rest of lunch talking about nursery plans, debating cribs versus bassinets, discussing whether they needed a rocking chair or if that was overkill, normal parent stuff, future planning. It felt good. Back home, Lucas met them at the door. Did you see the baby? Mia handed him one of the ultrasound pictures. Right there. Lucas squinted at it. That's the baby? Yep. It looks like a blob. It's a very important blob, Ethan said. Can I keep this picture? Mia looked surprised. You want to? Yeah, for my room, so I can show people. Sure, buddy. It's yours. Lucas ran off clutching the ultrasound image, already planning where to hang it. Ethan and Mia exchanged glances. He's excited, Mia said. He's been asking for a sibling since he was 4. Think he knows what he's getting into? Not even a little bit. We should probably prepare him. Good luck with that. He thinks babies are just small people who sleep a lot. He's not entirely wrong. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable rhythm. Mia's morning sickness finally started to ease up around week 14, and she had more energy than she'd had in months. They painted the nursery together, a soft sage green that Mia found after scrolling through approximately 700 paint samples. Lucas helped by getting more paint on himself than the walls, but he was enthusiastic about it. Ethan's family found out when his mother called unexpectedly, and Mia answered his phone without thinking. Who's this? His mother asked. Oh, this is Mia. Ethan's... She faltered, unsure how to finish that sentence. Ethan's what? Girlfriend, I guess. There was a long pause. He didn't mention a girlfriend. It's kind of new. How new? I should probably let him explain, but Ethan's mother was already in full interrogation mode. Are you the neighbor, the one he mentioned helping a few months ago? Yes. And now you're living together? It's complicated, I'll say. Put my son on the phone. Mia handed over the phone, looking apologetic. Ethan took it, already bracing himself. Mom. Ethan Alexander Vale, you have a girlfriend living in your house, and you didn't think to mention this. It happened fast. Apparently. How long? A few months? And Lucas is okay with this? Lucas loves her. There was another pause, and when his mother spoke again, her voice was softer. Is she good to you? Yeah, Mom, she is. Then I want to meet her, properly, not over the phone while ambushing her. We'll come visit. This weekend. Mom, this weekend, Ethan, I'm not negotiating. She hung up before he could argue. Ethan looked at Mia. We're going to meet my mother this weekend. Oh no, it'll be fine. She thinks I'm some random woman who moved in on you. She'll get over it once she meets you. You don't know that. I know my mother. She's protective, but she's fair, and she'll love you. Mia looked unconvinced. What if she asks about the baby? Then we tell her. Just like that? Just like that. Mia, we can't keep this secret forever. People are going to find out. I know, I wanted more time before dealing with judgment. My mother won't judge. Everyone judges. Ethan pulled her close, kissed her forehead. Then let them. We know what we're doing. That's what matters. Do we? know what we're doing. Not even a little bit, but we're doing it anyway. That Saturday, they drove to Eugene proper, to the suburban house where Ethan grew up. His mother answered the door before they even knocked, pulling Ethan into a hug, and then turning to Mia with an appraising look. So you're the one who finally got my son to slow down. I don't know about that, Mia said. He's been working himself to death for years. If you got him to take an afternoon off, that's an accomplishment. Lucas pushed past them all. Grandma, guess what? What, sweetheart? Mia's having a baby. Dead silence. Ethan closed his eyes. Lucas, buddy, we talked about this. What? You said we were telling Grandma today. I meant later. Oh. Ethan's mother, Patricia, looked between them, processing. You're pregnant? Mia nodded, mute. And it's Ethan's? Mom, it's a reasonable question. You've been dating what, 2 months? 6, Ethan corrected. And yes, it's mine. He stopped, trying to figure out how to explain the whole situation in a way that wouldn't sound completely insane. Patricia held up a hand. You know what? Let's go inside, have some coffee, talk like adults instead of standing on my porch. They followed her in. Lucas immediately disappeared to find his grandfather, leaving the adults to navigate the conversation. Patricia made coffee that none of them really wanted and sat them down at her kitchen table. She looked at Mia first. Are you happy about this? Yes, Mia said without hesitation. And you? Patricia turned to Ethan. Yeah, Mom, I am. Even though you barely know each other? We know each other, Ethan said. Maybe not in the traditional way, but we know each other. Patricia sipped her coffee, thinking. Tell me how this happened. So they did. The whole story, Mia's loss, the desperate request, the decision to help, how things had evolved beyond the original arrangement. Ethan watched his mother's face, trying to read her reaction. When they finished, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. That's the most unusual thing I've ever heard, she said finally. I know, Mia said quietly. But I can't say I don't understand it. Grief makes people do strange things, and sometimes those strange things turn out to be exactly right. She reached across the table, took Mia's hand. You lost your daughter. I can't imagine that pain, but I can see you're trying to heal from it. And if my son can help with that, then I'm glad. Mia's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm still going to ask a million questions and probably drive you both crazy. That's what mothers do. I can handle that. Good, because you're family now, whether you planned it or not. The rest of the visit went easier than Ethan expected. His father, Robert, took the news with characteristic calm, just nodded and said, "Congratulations," like people told him about surprise pregnancies every day. Lucas charmed both grandparents by showing them the ultrasound picture and explaining in great detail about how babies developed, most of which he'd clearly made up. On the drive home, Mia was quiet. You okay? Ethan asked. Your mom called me family. Yeah, I haven't been part of a family in 3 years. Well, you are now. She looked out the window, and Ethan saw her wiping at her eyes. I forgot what that felt like. Good or bad? Good. Scary. Both. That seems to be our theme. What? Being scared and happy at the same time? Yeah. I could get used to it. Me too. May turned into June, and Mia's belly started showing for real. Not just bloating or imagination, but an actual bump that changed how her clothes fit. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror one morning, shirt pulled up, staring at her reflection. It's real, she said when Ethan walked in to brush his teeth. We've established that. No, I mean, I can see it now. There's actually a person in there. Ethan came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, hands resting on the bump. There is. I'm getting fat. You're pregnant. There's a difference. Tell that to my genes. Your genes are wrong. She leaned back against him, and they stood there looking at their reflection. Two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their grief, now building something new. Do you ever think about them? Mia asked quietly. Caroline and Emma and David? Every day. Me too. I feel guilty sometimes, like I'm replacing them. You're not replacing anyone. You're just learning to live again. Is that what we're doing? I think so. Mia turned in his arms, looked up at him. I love you. The words hung between them, the first time either of them had said it explicitly, even though it had been obvious for weeks now. I love you too, Ethan said. Even though I'm crazy and broken and probably making your life way more complicated than it needs to be, especially because of that. She kissed him, soft and slow, and Ethan thought about how strange it was that the worst things in life could somehow lead to the best things if you were brave enough to keep going. The 20-week ultrasound came on a sweltering day in July. They brought Lucas this time, let him see his sibling on the screen. He pressed his face close to the monitor, fascinated. That's the baby? That's your sister, the tech said. It's a girl? Mia's voice cracked. It's a girl. Want to see? She showed them on the screen, pointing out the anatomy that confirmed it. Ethan felt Mia's hand tighten in his. A daughter, she whispered. Yeah, I'm having another daughter. The tech, sensing the emotion, gave them a moment. Lucas was still staring at the screen. She's tiny, he observed. She'll get bigger, Ethan said. Can I teach her stuff? When she's older, sure. Like Legos? Definitely Legos. In the car afterward, Mia was crying again. Seemed like half of pregnancy was crying at random things. Ethan had stopped being surprised by it. I didn't think I'd get this, she said. Another daughter. Another chance. You deserve it. Do I? Yes. She looked down at the ultrasound pictures, at the profile of their baby girl. We need to pick a name. We have time. I want to call her something, not just the baby. They'd been throwing around names for weeks, never settling on anything. But sitting there with the proof of her gender, it felt more urgent. What about Rose? Ethan suggested. You mentioned it before. Rose Carter Vale, Mia tested it out. That's a lot of name. It's distinguished. It's a mouthful. Rose Vale, then. Simple. Mia considered. I like it. Rose. Yeah, that feels right. Rose it is. They told Lucas on the way home, and he immediately started planning everything his sister would need to know. I'll teach her about dinosaurs, he said, and space, and how to build the best Lego sets. She'll be lucky to have you, Mia said. I know. His confidence was hilarious and sweet at the same time. Back home, they started working on the nursery in earnest. Furniture arrived, a crib Ethan assembled with Lucas's help, a changing table, a rocking chair that Mia insisted on, even though Ethan had said it was overkill. They hung pictures, organized tiny clothes that Mia had started accumulating, set up everything a baby would need. It looks real now, Mia said, standing in the doorway of the completed room. It is real. I know, but seeing it all put together, she stopped, overcome again. Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. She's gonna love it. You think so? I know so. August brought heat waves and swollen ankles, and Mia complaining about everything while simultaneously glowing with happiness. She was 6 months along, moving slower, sleeping more, eating strange combinations of food that made no sense to anyone but her. Pickles and ice cream? Ethan asked, watching her make the combination for the 3rd time that week. Don't judge me. I'm not judging. I'm fascinated. The baby wants what the baby wants. Apparently the baby wants diabetes. She threw a pickle at him. He dodged, laughing. They'd fallen into domesticity so completely that Ethan sometimes forgot there had been a time before Mia. Work continued, board meetings happened, quarterly earnings came and went. But his focus had shifted. Home was where he wanted to be, with Mia and Lucas and the life they were building together. His team noticed. His COO pulled him aside one day during a video call. You're different, she said. Different how? Happier. Less stressed. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I'm having a baby. I heard. Congratulations. She's good for you. Yeah, she is. September came, and with it the final stretch. Mia was uncomfortable all the time now. Couldn't find a position that didn't hurt. Complained about her back and her feet, and how she couldn't see her toes anymore. But she was also excited, energized by how close they were to meeting Rose. They took childbirth classes that made Ethan question everything he thought he knew about the human body. Mia practiced breathing techniques while Ethan tried not to panic about all the things that could go wrong. You're going to be there, right? She asked one night. Where? In the delivery room. when it happens. Of course, where else would I be? I don't know, some men can't handle it. Mia, I'm not leaving you. Not for any of this. She relaxed slightly. Okay, good. Because I'm terrified and I need you there. I'll be there. Every second. Even the gross parts? Especially the gross parts. You say that now. I mean it. And he did. Whatever happened, however hard it got, he was seeing this through. They both were. October arrived with cooling temperatures and leaves turning colors and a sense of anticipation that permeated everything. Mia was due in 2 weeks, right on schedule. They had the hospital bag packed, the car seat installed, everything ready. All they needed now was Rose. The contractions started on a Tuesday night, mild at first. Mia timed them while Ethan tried not to hover. Still 20 minutes apart, she said. Should we call the doctor? Not yet. She said to wait until they're 5 minutes apart or my water breaks. Okay, what do you need? For you to stop pacing. You're making me nervous. Ethan forced himself to sit down. Lucas was already asleep, blissfully unaware that his sister was about to make her entrance. The contractions got closer together. 15 minutes. 10. By midnight, they were at 7 minutes apart, and Mia was gripping the edge of the counter through each one. I think we should go, Ethan said. Not yet. Mia, not yet. But half an hour later, her water broke in a gush that soaked through her pajama pants and made them both freeze. Okay, she said. Now we go. Ethan called his mother to come stay with Lucas, grabbed the hospital bag, helped Mia to the car. She was breathing through contractions that were coming faster now, 4 minutes apart, 3 minutes. You're doing great, he said. I'm not doing anything yet. You're staying calm. That counts. I'm freaking out internally. That also counts. They made it to the hospital in record time, got checked in, got Mia into a gown and hooked up to monitors that showed the baby's heartbeat and the strength of contractions. Everything was moving fast now, the medical team preparing for delivery. How far apart are the contractions? The nurse asked. 2 minutes, Mia gasped. And you're at 8 centimeters. This baby wants out. That was putting it mildly. Within an hour, Mia was at 10 centimeters, the doctor was there, and everything was happening at once. Okay, Mia, the doctor said. Next contraction, I need you to push. Ethan held her hand, let her squeeze hard enough to cut off circulation. She pushed, face red with effort, and he had never felt more useless in his life. You're doing amazing, he said. Shut up. Okay, another contraction, another push. The doctor was encouraging, the nurses were efficient, and Mia was in pain and exhausted and not giving up. I can see the head, the doctor said. One more big push. Mia bore down, making a sound Ethan had never heard from her. And then suddenly there was a baby, wet and screaming and impossibly small. It's a girl, the doctor confirmed, even though they already knew. They placed Rose on Mia's chest, and Ethan watched his girlfriend, the woman he loved, meet her daughter for the second time in her life. Mia was crying, holding this tiny person against her skin, whispering things Ethan couldn't hear. Hi, she said through tears. Hi, baby girl. I'm your mom. Ethan couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just stood there watching the two most important people in his world exist together for the first time. A nurse eventually took Rose to clean her up and check her over while they delivered the placenta and stitched up Mia. Ethan stayed next to her, holding her hand, processing everything that had just happened. We did it, Mia said weakly. You did it. I just stood here. You were here. That's what mattered. They brought Rose back, wrapped in a hospital blanket, wearing a tiny hat. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Perfectly healthy. Ethan held her for the first time and felt something crack open in his chest. A different kind of love than what he felt for Lucas, but just as powerful. She's perfect, he said. She is. You're perfect. I'm exhausted and gross and perfect, Ethan repeated firmly. Mia smiled, too tired to argue. They stayed in the hospital for 2 days, learning how to care for a newborn, figuring out feeding schedules and diaper changes and all the tiny details that came with a new life. Lucas visited and was alternately fascinated and disappointed that his sister couldn't do anything yet. When does she get fun? He asked. In a few months, Ethan said. That's forever. You'll survive. When they finally brought Rose home, the house felt different, complete somehow. Mia settled into the rocking chair Ethan had insisted they didn't need, nursing Rose while Lucas showed her his Lego collection even though she couldn't see more than a foot away. She needs to know these things, Lucas insisted. Absolutely, Mia agreed, smiling. Ethan stood in the doorway of the nursery watching his family and thought about how impossible this all would have seemed a year ago. How broken they'd both been. How unlikely it was that they'd found each other, let alone built this. But they had. Against all odds, through grief and fear and desperation, they'd created something real and good and whole. Mia looked up at him, caught him watching. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That I'm happy." "Yeah?" "Yeah." "Me too." Rose made a small noise, and they both looked down at her, this tiny person who'd brought them together, who represented hope and healing and second chances. "Thank you," Mia said quietly. "For what?" "For saying yes. For helping me. For loving us." Ethan crossed the room, kissed her forehead, touched Rose's impossibly small hand. "Thank you for knocking on my door." "You keep saying that." "I'll keep saying it as long as it's true." Outside the window, the October sun was setting, painting everything in gold and orange light. Somewhere in the world, people were grieving and struggling and trying to survive their pain. But here, in this room, 3 people who'd lost everything had found something new. And that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. The first week home with Rose was chaos wrapped in exhaustion, wrapped in moments of pure terror that Ethan had somehow forgotten about from when Lucas was a baby. Newborns didn't come with instruction manuals, and even though they'd taken the classes and read the books, nothing quite prepared you for the reality of a tiny human who communicated exclusively through crying. "I can't get her to stop," Mia said at 2 in the morning, rocking Rose, who was screaming at a pitch that seemed impossible for something so small. Ethan took her, tried the burping thing the nurse had shown them. Rose screamed louder. "Maybe she's hungry again?" "I just fed her 20 minutes ago." "Diaper?" "Changed it." "Then what does she want?" "I don't know." Mia's voice cracked with frustration and tears. "I should know. I did this before. Why don't I know?" Ethan shifted Rose to his shoulder, patting her back in what he hoped was a soothing rhythm. "You did this 7 years ago with a different baby. Every kid is different. That's not helpful." "I know. I'm sorry." Rose finally calmed down, making small hiccuping sounds against Ethan's neck. He was afraid to move, afraid to breathe wrong and set her off again. "How did you do that?" Mia asked. "I have no idea." They stood there in the nursery, both exhausted, both terrified they were doing everything wrong, and Ethan thought about how parenting was just educated guessing with higher stakes. Lucas adjusted to having a sister with the chaotic energy of a 6-year-old who thought babies were basically dolls that made noise. He wanted to hold her constantly, show her his toys, explain things to her even though she couldn't understand a word. "And this is my school," he said seriously, holding up a drawing while Mia held Rose. "You'll go there too when you're big. The playground is the best part." "She's 3 days old, buddy," Ethan said. "School is a long way off." "I'm preparing her." "For what?" "Life." Hard to argue with that logic. Mia was struggling more than she'd admit. Ethan would find her crying while nursing Rose at 3 in the morning, or staring at the baby with an expression that looked like grief and joy fighting for dominance. "Talk to me," he said one night after Lucas had gone to bed, and Rose was finally asleep in her bassinet. "I'm fine." "You're crying." "Hormones." "Mia." She wiped at her eyes, looked at him. "I keep thinking about Emma, about how I did everything wrong with her." "You didn't." "I did. I was impatient when she was fussy. I got frustrated when she wouldn't sleep. I took for granted that I'd have years to be better." Her voice broke. "And then I didn't. And now I have Rose and I'm terrified I'm going to mess this up too." Ethan pulled her close, let her cry against his shoulder. "You're not going to mess this up. You don't know that. I know you're trying. I know you love her. That's more than half the battle. What if it's not enough?" "It is. Trust me." But he could see she didn't quite believe him, could see the weight of her past pressing down on this new beginning. Dr. Chen had warned them about postpartum depression, told them to watch for signs. Ethan watched Mia carefully over the next few weeks, trying to distinguish between normal new parent exhaustion and something deeper. "How are you feeling?" he asked one morning after a particularly rough night. "Tired." "That's not what I meant." Mia looked at him, understanding crossing her face. "I'm okay. I promise. Some days are hard, but I'm okay." "You'd tell me if you weren't?" "Yeah, I would." He wanted to believe her. Mostly he did, but there was still a fragility to her that worried him, a sense that she was holding herself together through sheer force of will. 2 weeks in, Mia's phone rang at dinner. She looked at the screen, went pale. "Who is it?" Ethan asked. "Sarah, David's sister." "You going to answer?" Mia stared at the phone like it might explode. "I told her I was pregnant back in July. She didn't respond." "Maybe she's responding now. Or maybe she's calling to tell me what a terrible person I am." "Only one way to find out." Mia answered, stepped out onto the porch. Ethan gave her privacy but watched through the window, saw her body language shift from defensive to something softer. The conversation lasted 20 minutes. When she came back inside, her eyes were red, but she was smiling. "She wants to meet Rose," Mia said. "That's good." She apologized for shutting me out after the accident, for blaming me. "What did you say?" "That I blame me too, that I understood." And she said it wasn't my fault, that she was wrong, that she wants to be part of our lives if I'll let her. Ethan pulled her into a hug. "That's really good, Mia. I thought I'd lost her too, but maybe—" She stopped, voice thick. "Maybe some things can be repaired." Sarah visited the following weekend, a 40-something woman with David's same eyes and a cautious smile. She brought a handmade blanket for Rose and apologies she'd clearly rehearsed. "I was angry," she said, holding Rose carefully, "after they died. And it was easier to blame you than to accept that sometimes terrible things just happen." "I get it," Mia said quietly. "But it wasn't fair. And I'm sorry." "Thank you." They talked for hours, about David and Emma, about the years Mia had spent alone, about this new life she was building. Sarah held Rose and cried, said the baby had David's nose. "Does that bother you?" she asked Mia. "That she's not his?" "No. Emma wasn't his biologically either. I was pregnant when we met, but he loved her like she was. Blood doesn't make a family." Sarah looked at Ethan. "You're good to her?" "I try to be." "That's all anyone can do." When she left, Mia stood on the porch, waving until Sarah's car disappeared. Ethan came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "You okay?" "Better than okay. I got my sister back." "You did." "Things are coming together. Finally." Ethan kissed the sides of her neck. "They are." Rose hit the 1-month mark and promptly developed colic that made the first few weeks look easy by comparison. She screamed for hours every evening, inconsolable no matter what they tried. Mia walked her, bounced her, sang to her. Ethan took shifts when Mia was too exhausted to function. Lucas wore noise-canceling headphones and did homework in his room. "This is normal, right?" Mia asked the pediatrician during a checkup. "Completely normal. Frustrating, but normal. It usually peaks around 6 weeks and gets better from there." 6 weeks, Mia repeated weakly. "You can do 6 weeks." They barely made it. The colic wore them both down to raw nerves and short tempers. They snapped at each other over stupid things, who'd forgotten to buy more diapers, whose turn it was to do laundry, whether Rose needed a sleep specialist or just time. "I'm sorry," Ethan said after a particularly sharp exchange about nothing important. "I'm sorry too. I'm just so tired." "Me too." They stood in the kitchen, both running on 3 hours of sleep, both frayed at the edges, and Ethan thought about how nobody talked about this part. The books made it seem like love conquered all, but love didn't do laundry or cure colic or make you less exhausted. "We're going to get through this," he said. "Are we?" "We survived worse." "Have we?" "Mia, you survived losing your entire family. I survived losing my wife. We can survive a colicky baby." She laughed, but it was tinged with hysteria. "When you put it like that, perspective." "Perspective," she agreed. True to the pediatrician's word, the colic started improving around 6 weeks. Rose still fussed, but it was manageable fussing instead of hours-long screaming marathons. They could put her down occasionally, could eat dinner with 2 hands, could have conversations that didn't revolve around bodily functions. "I forgot what your voice sounded like," Ethan joked one evening. "Very funny." "I'm serious. We've been in survival mode for so long." "And now? Now maybe we can actually enjoy this." Mia looked down at Rose, who was doing tummy time on a blanket and hating every second of it. "She's getting big." "She is. Lucas was never this fussy. Different baby. Your mom said you were an easy baby, too." "Are you calling our daughter difficult?" "I'm saying she has opinions." Rose chose that moment to spit up all over the blanket. Mia sighed. "Strong opinions," Ethan amended. November arrived cold and wet, and with it came the question neither of them had really addressed yet. "What are we?" Mia asked one night after the kids were asleep. "What do you mean?" "I mean, officially. We live together. We have a baby together. You tell people I'm your girlfriend, but we've never actually talked about what this is." Ethan set down his laptop, gave her his full attention. "What do you want it to be?" "I asked first. I want it to be permanent. I want you here, in this house, in my life. I want to raise Rose together and be a family with Lucas. I want—" He paused. "I want everything with you." Mia was quiet for a long moment. "That's a lot." "Too much?" "No, just a lot." She moved closer on the couch. "I want that too. I'm just scared." "Of what?" "That I'll lose it again. That I'll get used to being happy and then everything will fall apart." "It might." "That's not reassuring." "I'm being honest. Life doesn't come with guarantees. Bad things happen to good people. But you can't live in fear of what might go wrong." "Can't I?" "You can, but is that really living?" Mia looked at him, eyes searching his face. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just tired of being scared." "Me too." She took his hand. "So what do we do?" "We keep going. We choose each other every day. We build something real." "Just like that?" "Just like that." She kissed him, soft and slow, and Ethan thought about how strange love was, how it could grow from the strangest circumstances, how it could heal old wounds while creating new vulnerabilities. Christmas came with all the chaos of a 6-year-old who believed in Santa and a 3-month-old who had no idea what was happening. Lucas woke them at 5 in the morning, vibrating with excitement. "Santa came! He ate the cookies! He drank the milk!" "That's great, buddy," Ethan mumbled. "What time is it?" "Time for presents." They dragged themselves downstairs, Mia carrying Rose, who was fussing because her schedule was disrupted. Lucas tore through presents with single-minded intensity, while Rose stared at the Christmas tree lights like they held the secrets of the universe. Patricia and Robert came over for dinner, along with Sarah, who'd become a regular presence in their lives again. The house was full and loud and messy, nothing like the quiet Christmases Ethan had spent in the years after Caroline died. "This is nice," his mother said, helping with dishes while everyone else was in the living room. "It is." "You're happy?" "Yeah, Mom, I am." "Good. You deserve it." She paused. "When are you going to marry her?" Ethan nearly dropped the plate he was drying. "What?" "Mia, when are you going to marry her?" "We haven't talked about that." "Why not?" "It's complicated." "Everything's complicated. That's not a reason." Ethan set down the plate, looked at his mother. "You think I should ask her?" "I think you love her. I think she loves you. I think you're already acting like a married couple. The paperwork is just a formality at this point. She might say no. She might, but you won't know unless you ask." The conversation stayed with him over the next few weeks. Marriage hadn't been on his radar. He'd been so focused on just getting through each day that he hadn't thought about big gestures or formal commitments. But his mother was right. They were already committed. The question was whether making it official mattered. He thought it might. Rose was 4 months old when Ethan brought it up, casually, while they were giving her a bath. "What would you think about getting married?" Mia's hand slipped, splashing water everywhere. "What?" "Married. You and me." "Are you proposing?" "I'm asking a hypothetical question." "That's a terrible proposal." "It's not a proposal, it's a—" He stopped. "Do you want it to be a proposal?" Mia stared at him, Rose forgotten for a moment. "I don't know. Do I?" "You're asking me? You brought it up. You—" Rose started crying, unhappy about being ignored. They both turned their attention back to her, finishing the bath in charged silence. Later, after Rose was asleep and Lucas was in bed, they sat on the couch and actually talked about it. "I don't need a wedding," Mia said, "if that's what you're worried about." "I'm not worried about anything. Ethan tried to find the right words. "I want you to know I'm all in, that this isn't just convenient or temporary, that I choose you." "I already know that." "Do you?" "Yes, you show me every day." She took his hand. "But if you're asking if I'd marry you, the answer is yes." "Yeah?" "Yeah. Not because I need a piece of paper to prove we're committed, but because I want everyone to know you're mine and I'm yours." "That's very possessive." "I'm a possessive person." Ethan pulled her close, kissed her properly. "Good. So am I." They got married on a Saturday in February at the courthouse with Lucas and Rose and both sets of parents present. No fancy dress, no big reception, just a simple ceremony that made everything official. Mia wore a blue dress she already owned. Ethan wore the suit he kept for board meetings. Lucas held Rose during the vows and managed not to drop her, which everyone counted as a victory. "You may kiss the bride," the officiant said. Ethan did, and he heard Lucas make a gagging sound behind them, but didn't care. "We're married," Mia said when they pulled apart. "We are." That was fast. "You want to do it again slower?" "No, this was perfect." They went to dinner after, a family celebration at a restaurant that tolerated babies and 6-year-olds with equal patience. Rose slept through most of it in her carrier. Lucas told everyone who would listen that his dad got married today. "How do you feel?" Patricia asked Mia. "Happy. Terrified. Both. That's marriage." "Is it always this intense?" "If you're doing it right." Driving home that night, Ethan reached over and took Mia's hand. "No regrets?" "Not one." "You?" "Not one." Rose made a noise from her car seat, and Lucas asked if being married meant they had to act different now, and Mia laughed and said no. And Ethan thought about how this was what happiness looked like, messy and loud and nothing like he'd imagined, but real and solid and his. Spring came with cherry blossoms and Rose learning to roll over and Lucas losing his first tooth. Mia went back to work part-time, freelancing from home while Rose napped. Ethan scaled back his hours even more, realized the company could function without him micromanaging every detail. "You're different," his CFO said during a quarterly review. "Different how?" "Less intense, more balanced." "Is that a problem?" "No, it's good. You're making better decisions now than when you were working 80-hour weeks. Turns out sleep helps with cognitive function." "Who knew?" Rose hit 6 months and started eating solid foods, which meant Mia and Ethan spent a lot of time cleaning pureed vegetables off every surface in the kitchen. Lucas found this hilarious and documented it extensively with Ethan's phone. "She's wearing sweet potatoes," he reported, showing them a photo. "Yes, we can see that," Mia said, wiping orange mush out of Rose's hair. "Can I post it?" "No." "Why not?" "Because your sister deserves some dignity." "She's a baby. She doesn't care." "I care." Lucas grumbled but deleted the photo. Rose grabbed a handful of pureed peas and smeared them across the high chair tray with artistic intention. "She's creative," Ethan observed. "She's a disaster." Same thing at this age. Mia looked at him, covered in food, exhausted, happy. "I love you. I love you too. Even when I'm covered in vegetables?" "Especially then." Summer brought Rose's first birthday, which they celebrated with a small party in the backyard. Sarah came, and Patricia and Robert, and a few of Lucas's friends who were confused about why they were celebrating a baby's birthday, but happy to eat cake anyway. Rose sat in front of her smash cake with a serious expression, considering it carefully before reaching out one tentative finger to touch the frosting. Then she grabbed a handful and shoved it directly into her face, and everyone cheered. "She's definitely your daughter," Ethan said to Mia. "Why, because she goes all in?" "Because she thinks about it first and then commits completely." "I do not do that." "You absolutely do that." Mia shoved him playfully, but she was smiling. They watched Rose destroy her cake with methodical intensity while Lucas and his friends ran around the yard playing tag. "Can you believe it's been a year?" Mia asked. "Feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time." "I know what you mean. She leaned against him, and Ethan wrapped an arm around her waist, pulled her close. A year ago, they'd been terrified new parents with a crying newborn and no idea what they were doing. Now they were slightly less terrified parents with a 1-year-old and a better handle on things. Progress. Thank you, Mia said quietly. For what? For giving me this. For helping me find my way back to being happy. You did that yourself. No, we did it together, and that was true. Neither of them had healed alone. They'd found each other in their brokenness and helped each other put the pieces back together in a new configuration that actually worked. That night, after the party was cleaned up and both kids were asleep, they sat on the porch like they had 100 times before. Do you still think about them? Ethan asked. Emma and David? Every day. Not in the way I used to, with that sharp grief that made it hard to breathe. But they're still there. She looked at him. Do you still think about Caroline? Yeah. Always will. Does it feel like betraying her, being happy with me? Sometimes. But I think she'd be glad I found you, that Lucas has a family, that I'm not just surviving anymore. Emma would like Rose, Mia said. They would have been good sisters. They would have. I used to think I could replace them. That if I just had another child, another family, the hole they left would be filled. But it doesn't work like that. No, it doesn't. Rose doesn't replace Emma. You don't replace David. This life doesn't erase the one I lost. But it's still a good life. It's a great life. Mia took his hand. I'm grateful for it, for you, for all of this. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence. Two people who'd learned that grief and happiness could coexist, that you could honor the past while building a future, that love wasn't about forgetting what you'd lost, but learning to carry it while still moving forward. Lucas started first grade that fall, came home every day with elaborate stories about his teacher and his friends and the injustice of homework. Rose was walking now, getting into everything, developing a personality that was equal parts sweet and stubborn. She gets that from you, Mia told Ethan after Rose had a complete meltdown about not being allowed to eat dog food. We don't have a dog, hypothetical dog food. She gets her stubbornness from you. I'm not stubborn, Mia. You once argued with me for 20 minutes about the correct way to load a dishwasher. Because there is a correct way, and you were doing it wrong. My point exactly. She threw a dish towel at him. He caught it, laughing. This was their life now, bickering about dishes and managing tantrums and navigating the chaos of 2 kids and 2 careers and a relationship that had started from the most unlikely circumstances. It wasn't perfect. Some days were hard. Rose still didn't sleep through the night consistently. Lucas had moments of jealousy about sharing attention. Ethan's work got stressful. Mia struggled with anxiety that all of this would somehow disappear. But they were happy, genuinely, messily, imperfectly happy. One evening in late October, almost exactly 2 years after Rose was born, Ethan found Mia in the nursery even though Rose was already asleep in the master bedroom now. She was standing by the window, looking out at the street. You okay? He asked. I was just thinking about that night, when I knocked on your door. That was a good night. It was a desperate night. I was so broken I asked a virtual stranger to help me have a baby. And I was lonely enough to say yes. She turned to face him. Do you regret it? Not for a second. You? Not for a second. Ethan crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. We were both a mess. We really were. But we figured it out. We did, somehow. You know what I think? Ethan said. What? I think sometimes the best things in life come from the worst moments. Not because the bad things were good, but because they forced us to be brave enough to reach for something different. That's very philosophical. I have my moments. Mia laughed, rested her head against his chest. I'm glad I was brave enough to knock on your door. I'm glad I was brave enough to answer. They stood there in the empty nursery, holding each other, and Ethan thought about all the ways life could break you, and all the ways you could choose to heal. About how grief didn't have to be the end of the story. About how sometimes asking for help was the bravest thing you could do. About how 2 broken people could build something whole together if they were willing to try. Downstairs, Lucas was watching TV. In their bedroom, Rose was asleep in her crib. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, the same street where this had all started. But everything was different now. Better. Not perfect. Life was never perfect. but real and solid and theirs. Come on, Mia said, pulling back. Lucas needs to go to bed, and we need to clean up the disaster zone he calls a bedroom. The glamorous life of parents. Wouldn't trade it for anything. Me neither. They went downstairs together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Because that's what they did now. They faced things together. And that made all the difference. The years would continue to unfold. More birthdays, more milestones, more ordinary days that added up to an extraordinary life. Rose would grow up knowing she was wanted, loved, chosen. Lucas would be the kind of big brother who taught her everything he knew, even the stuff she didn't need to learn. Mia would heal more each day, though some scars never fully faded. Ethan would learn that success wasn't measured in quarterly earnings, but in moments like these, messy, chaotic, perfect moments with the people who mattered most. They would fight sometimes, struggle sometimes, question their choices and wonder if they were doing anything right. But they would do it together. And in the end, that was what mattered. Not the fairy tale ending where everything was magically fixed, not the perfect family that never existed outside of imagination. Just two people who'd been brave enough to ask for help when they needed it most. Brave enough to say yes when logic said no. Brave enough to build something new from the ruins of what they'd lost. Just a family, complicated, imperfect, real, choosing each other every day. And if that wasn't a happy ending, Ethan didn't know what was.